Oh, well, welcome to Inside the Birds post-game live. Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan, and woo, we can all wipe the sweat off the brow as the Carolina Panthers came in and did everything they possibly could, Adam, to give the Eagles a run for their money. And for about a second there, when Xavier Legette goes to the ground with the ball and into the end zone, you think, oh my God, is this really happening? It's incomplete. The Panthers don't get the fourth down conversion. The Eagles win, and they get their ninth straight win, Adam. So we can sit here and talk about some difficulties in the game, but the bottom line is Eagles win, 9 straight wins, and they continue to stay one game behind the Lions and put pressure on the Lions and the Vikings for that number 1 seed in the NFC. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's just one of these things where, again, you see these point spreads of what I think it might have closed 13.5. There are a record number of teams covering spreads of 8 points or more. The dogs are. And this game was ugly. I mean, this is one of those. This game, we try not to talk about last year because this team has been so different from last year's team. This is the first time that I've seen this team look like last year's team. And yeah, you're right. They won the game. Their tackling was poor. Boy, Chuba Hubbard was slippery. His nickname should be the Eel. He's slippery as an eel, man. He was great today. They're undermanned the Panthers, so they hung in there. But as you said, to set this up, they found a way to win the Eagles. They did win the game. They almost blew it, but they're hanging in there. They're still one game back. And then the Vikings, as you said, nobody talks about them. Somehow they're only one game back, and they have the same record as the Eagles.
You know what? I think Sam Darnold had 5 touchdowns today. I think at some point we're going to have to stop doing the but Sam Darnold thing with the Vikings.
Yeah, exactly.
He's been pretty good. He'll have his games, but he's been pretty good. And you're right. This Eagles offense particular is what I think you're referring to for the kind of the second straight week. Now, last week was the Ravens. This week's the Panthers. Panthers are not nearly as talented defensively, but they gave the Eagles offense some issues. They gave pass protection some issues. You heard Mark Sanchez, and we'll get into this in the show. Mark Sanchez sort of echo a sentiment, that we've said all year long, because you heard Sanchez says, well, I don't understand. The throw is there. Why didn't Jalen throw it? Or you got to pull the trigger quicker there. And clearly the pass offense was a little bit behind. But this is what we know about the Eagles. They will play good enough defense. They'll hang in there. You'll get a good second half effort out of Saquon Barkley like they did. And then in this game, you sort of get an unlikely, I don't want to say a hero emerge, but a source of touchdown production that you needed at the time in Grant Calcaterra stepping in for Dallas Goedert. Now, the play, Adam, that I think the Panthers will look back at and say, this is where we really blew it. It wasn't necessarily the Legette drop there at the end, although that certainly is one of them. But they had the Eagles on a very long 3rd and long, and we know Jake Elliott is struggling, and they rushed Jalen Hurts so wide, which we talked about last week. Can't do that against Hurts, can't do that Lamar. And he ran right up the middle. It's almost like they just gave him the middle of the field where he was able to run and get that first down. And I believe then they capped off that drive with the touchdown to Calcaterra.
Yeah, I mean, having someone like Hurts when the pocket breaks down or there's an opportunity to run, I mean, that's the significant extra bonus that they have. And that's huge. It's huge, particularly when their passing game was non-existent once again. It's a problem. I mean, it was really bad today. It was a combination of, yes, Sanchez was right. Hurts wasn't pulling the trigger, wasn't pulling the pin. I don't know why. And then sometimes when he's looking, there were guys like, in fact, now we'll have to ask Greg when Greg breaks. Cosell will be with us Tuesday night, and also when we do the tape show. But I'm looking for those in breakers because we saw him hit a slant. We actually saw him hit a couple in breakers late, but there just didn't seem enough of them to get the ball out of Hurts' hands because he was super indecisive in the first half. It was kind of frustrating watching that. So I'm sure Sanchez, as a former quarterback, saw that, and he pointed some of that out, and that's got to change. But this is a game where you couldn't rely on one part of the game other than, like you said, the running game. In fact, Braden Mann had a couple punts until the late one that weren't great. You mentioned Elliott when Sirianni passed up on that long field goal, which if Jake was Money Jake, the old Money Jake, he's not passing up on that 54-yarder. He's kicking it.
Right.
You're just kicking it, but he's not doing it. And it actually turned out to be a great decision because they took the delay of game, I think, without looking. I think they took the delay of game. And then Maddox made the best play of the season for him. He made the play. He downed the punt at the 2-yard line. Great
100%.
job by Devontae.
Yeah, great play. Yeah, great punt, great down. I agree with you. That might have been the biggest key of the game. Well, at that time, it seemed like the biggest key of the game.
Oh yeah, true.
They wind up getting an unbelievable scramble play from Young to then Leggett, who had a lot of drops. Probably as he gets older in this league, will maybe learn to corral that last pass that he didn't get, and they'll learn to win those games. But feisty team. I see it as a good short-term benefit win for the Eagles because, again, they got a little bit closer to clinching the NFC East, which we know they're going to do. I mean, we assume they're going to do. They really should. I don't see it being a race unless they really stumble here over the next 2 or 3 weeks, right? You're still in pace with the Lions. You're still in pace against the NFC. The NFC number 1 seed. And it's not like you discovered something about the Eagles. This is kind of how they've been all year. Grind you out. Rely on the running game. Jalen Hurts will make some plays on third down that break it back, and he did. Not just running, but also passing today. He made a couple of throws. The one to Devontae Smith in the first half on 3rd and 8, really big throw, touchdown, big throw. And the defense we'll talk about. I know that people, because we've already seen some reaction about, well, they got no pass rush. Why did Vic blitz so much in the fourth quarter? Well, because they weren't getting a lot of pass rush. But I do think you have to credit the Panthers and Bryce Young, Adam. They made a lot of off structure, off the mark. It's not like Bryce Young sat in the pocket for 5 seconds and picked the Eagles defense apart. They had to work for a lot of their passes, and they made a lot of their yards. And I thought Bryce Young made a lot of nice second reaction plays and throws. And Adam
surprised me. Yeah, it surprised me. I was stunned. The 11-yarder was nice. I didn't think I was just surprised at how well he moved. And then, boy, they had a terrible injury. Jonathan Brooks, it looked bad. Their second rounder, it's too bad. Coming back from the ACL injury now, looks like another knee injury. We'll see what it turns out being. But Chuba Hubbard was so slippery. They just could not corral him. They very rarely had a good shot at him. He just evaded the. They haven't faced a running back like him. Boy, he's really improved as a runner. And Thielen broke their backs. I don't know what happened with him late in the game. I don't know if he ran out of gas. He looked like he was winded or his hamstring was acting up. But he killed them on third down plays. On fourth down, Leggett, as you mentioned, dropped that pass because it's funny. I'm ahead of. For some reason, my feed on Verizon 5 is ahead of everybody else. So I'm seeing it, and nobody's reacting on social media for like 8 to 10 seconds of like, wow, it would be funny to see what people think.
Right.
And anyway, overall, this is a game that they have to feel very fortunate that they won. You mentioned it, Bryce Young had some breaking plays, but in the end, they found a way to win. But this is probably, as we move forward here and sum it up, one of the sloppiest performances of the season. Offense, defense, a little bit of special teams. Jake is just, I don't know what to say about Jake Elliott. In a year where there are a lot of great kickers struggling, man, he's not the only one.
You're right. And listen, we'll cross the bridge when we get there, but it would be a shame if the Eagles, who have so much talent, they probably have the most blue chip talent in the end of all these 4 elite teams between them, the Lions, the Chiefs, and the Bills. The Eagles probably have the best starting 22. But we know that doesn't always mean you win the Super Bowl. It would be a shame if an inability to kick a field goal right when you really need it, or would do them in. That would be a real shame, especially given Jake's history of kicking in the big moment.
Well, here's the thing on what you're saying. It would really tell you a lot, and we saw it in this game. If Sirianni says, I'm taking it out of his hands, or his foot, excuse me, and I'm going to put it into the hands of my quarterback, you just hope your quarterback gets the job done. Jalen, more often than not, as much as he struggled throwing the ball this season in terms of seeing it, throwing, and all that, he's been kind of clutch. That's the thing with him. Like it looks bad sometimes, and you shake your head like, what is wrong with him? But then he makes a play with his legs or with his arms. So the passing game has been very disappointing this season, and it is what it is. That's got to get better. That to me what will hold him back from winning Super Bowl, because you with all this talent you're mentioning, I get Goddard's out, but with Brown and Smitty, they got to get the football. But I say that the second half, they were struggling so badly throwing the football. I'm thinking, you know what? I hate to say this, but go back to what they've been doing every game. Just take out of Hurts' hands and run the football. I'm just as much as I hate that, they're so good in the second half. What I'm getting to is they're so good at grinding and wearing a defense down where, like, sometimes you go, wow, this defense simply cannot get off the field. The Eagles are just running all over them. I thought they'd do that. In fact, they were throwing late in the game. In the fourth quarter, I was kind of surprised that they were dropping Hurts back. That's not like them to do that.
Yeah, and you wonder, were they just trying to unlock it, knowing that there's a bigger fish to fry out there, and they're going to have to be better in the pass game, or did they see something that they thought was going? I don't know. I really don't know. I was surprised by it too. But hey, we'll have to see what they do going forward. I agree with you. It'd be a shame if they lost a big playoff game or in the Super Bowl because of A, kicking, or B, the pass offense just could not completely keep up. But that hasn't hurt them yet. We've talked about it week after week, and it hasn't hurt them yet. But that's why I say it would be a shame if the one time it really does hurt them is when they need it the most. So, and by the way, I applaud Nick Sirianni for making the decision there to punt the ball. I mean, I think that he could have gone for it. He could have said, I have, and we'll put the game away here, or we could punt. He had three options, and he's been criticized earlier in the year, rightfully so, for some of the decisions he made that lacked context, right? The context here was, my punter's been doing a really nice job. We did this last week. My field goal kicker is struggling. My pass offense is struggling. To me, the obvious move there is to punt and make the Panthers have to go down the field. So I applaud Nick Sirianni for taking that approach. So let's talk a little bit about the Eagles' defense, and we'll finish up a little more on the offense. So I agree, even though I said, Adam, that the Panthers did make some really good off structure or off mark plays. The Eagles pass rush wasn't, this was not a great offensive tackle group for the Panthers. And I think you're starting to see, at least for 1 week here or 1 week more, when you don't have BG and you're relying on a 3-man D-end rotation, and one of them is Nolan Smith, who sort of gets a more of a run and pursuit pass rush than an overpowering one. And the other one's Jalen Hunt, who's a rookie, who's still trying to figure things out. In fact, Josh Sweat, who had such a great game last week, I can't remember a whole lot of hearing his name in this game. I'll have to go back and watch the 22, but it clearly wasn't the same type of pass rush today.
No, and because they haven't faced Bryce Young, they don't know how he scrambles. They don't know what he sees. And
good point.
He had some plays where he just saw distance. I mean, he saw the lane to run, and he was off. Just did a great job. And that's there's not much you can do about that. But overall, it's not like the Panthers ran up the score and they had 16 points. No, Leggett has that bad drop. He's got to catch that. He got lit up obviously in the first half on that drop where they hit him hard. But overall defensively, it's just the lack of discipline against Hubbard was disappointing. Don't let the 3.5 yards per carry, folks. That also was short yardage.
Yep.
The natural carries were well over 4 yards a carry.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a number of 3, 5, 6, 7 yard carries that I know he's a different style than they face. Boy, he's shifty as hell and slippery. Well, that was interesting. But getting back to your point with the pass rush, it showed up today. The BG issue. By the way, Blankenship, we got to talk about that. That was a major problem today, not having him.
That was going to be my next question for you.
That was another one.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think as Greg Cosell has told us that, people have told him that they view Blankenship as a tone setter. And plus, you just want to have your full defense. You want to have the guys who have been out there, who have a good feel for the game. And I think that not having him probably allowed some of the run defense not to be as good. He can come in the box and he can make a big stick. I think Nakobe Dean for 2 weeks in a row at times has struggled to really, it's one thing he can get around an offensive lineman really well and come downhill and make a tackle. Sometimes he has trouble getting off of the tackle or the guard, I should say, or center, whoever gets up onto him, trouble getting off of that. And this game to me had a little tinge. I was going to ask you a little bit of a tinge from 2 years ago when the Eagles were 8-0 and lost to Washington in that death by 1,000 cuts loss where Washington really ran the ball. And remember, Washington run the ball explosively. They average under 4 yards per carry.
Yeah, remember it. Yeah.
Panthers, 3.5 per carry today. But to your point, they did have a couple of more longer runs. Some of that was by the short distance running. But it wasn't like they were also ripping off explosive runs, but they were gradually just grinding away.
It was a lot of 4, 5, 6. They couldn't get off the field. That meat grinder game with Washington was a bunch of 1, 2s, and 3s, but they couldn't get negative runs. It's just it's a weird deal. And by the way, when they face Pittsburgh, it's going to be that's the game next Sunday. Is it going to be a bloodbath here in Philly? Because Pittsburgh really they want to win the division, and that's for the taking. Now that Baltimore lost to the Eagles last week.
Yep, they are also still. By the way, just to let you know, they're also still in it to get the top seed in the AFC.
Technically,
Buffalo falter
for sure. For sure, they only have 3 losses. It'll be hard, but the big one for them is win that division. That is super important to them. But getting back to the Eagles here, so I think going forward, so what do we learn? Jake Elliott's a problem, a kicker. I don't know that they're to the point where they're going to try out kickers. It's kind of like Baltimore's going through for the first time ever with their kicker, Justin Tucker. But at some point, you may want to start working a couple guys out. Sometimes talking to coaches over the years, you do it to send a sign to your kicker. You're not going to cut him, but you want it in his head. Hey, dude, come on. You got to be better than this. Now, they got Tyler Brown is responsible for him. He's a specialist coach. Brown did a phenomenal job. Remember how Jake struggled at the end of his tenure with Dave Phipp? Well, they got to figure this out. There's no bye anymore. They have to get this right. It seemed like the game before they righted it. Now he missed a field goal today, and he also missed an extra point that got called back due to a penalty. They got lucky. That's when they got the 2-point conversion. So that's a problem. We mentioned offensively the passing game is non-existent, save for a couple plays here or there. I'm not sure what. Again, that's a Cosell thing. We'll talk to Greg this week and see what he thought. And I know you watched the tape as well. And then defensively, they got to shore some things up. I'm not too worried about the run defense. It's still pretty good.
Agreed.
Yes, Hubbard got them on a number of carries for 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 yards, but I'm more concerned about the lack of the pass rush. It was inconsistent. Yes, they had some good ones, and Young sort of moved and he got out of the way, but I'm more concerned overall because no BG. It didn't show up last week, but sure as hell showed up in this game. They can't rely on him. By the way, don't forget how good of a run defender he is at setting the edge. So that's something that we knew was going to show its head. You mentioned Josh Sweat. Although Jalen Carter had another big game, Bond had a very active game. Actually got to the quarterback today, got a sack. But overall, yes, the lack of a pass rush. And by the way, Russell Wilson's coming to town. You know what it's like.
Yeah, and Russell, I've only watched a little bit of the Steelers last few weeks, but he's graduated from just throwing the moon ball to Pickens, who didn't even play against the Browns on Sunday, to being able to find those middle receivers that for a long time he wasn't finding there in Denver. So he's becoming a dangerous quarterback. I didn't even mean to do that. That was just no pun. Dangerous. Remember that was his Twitter handle, I think it was.
Yeah.
He is becoming a dangerous quarterback. I agree with you. I thought the first 2 series there was a little bit of an issue with tackling like that we haven't seen in a while. But as the game went on, it wasn't you didn't see guys just falling off guys. It was more just getting to the ball in time. And then again, the Panthers, I like what you say. Hubbard's slippery. He's not easy. You can be on him, but you don't always get him down right away. So he made some plays. Of course, Adam Thielen's been route running up. Good. And the Eagles play zone. So a lot, right? So your point is really valid. Zone defense works best when you get a front 4 rush. That's obvious. And for a long time, for several weeks, as the Eagles were vaulting to number 1 in defense, they were getting a great marriage between their back end and their front end pass rush. And honestly, there was a couple of sacks today that I thought were coverage sacks, where they got to because of the coverage just a couple of times. That the pass rush has to do its job. And if they're going to play zone and be effective, because that is their most effective defense, then they're going to need a little bit more from the edges and from the interior guys against better teams. There's no doubt about it. And if they don't get that for next week and then the next week, then we can start to have a conversation about, is something going on here? Are they running out of gas? Is there not enough in the pass rush? I won't panic about it right now, but I will say that's the first sign where you and I both thought, I thought that they were going to dominate the line of scrimmage a little bit more, especially on the edges.
Well, no, remember what Greg said that although Nolan Smith has really improved as a run defender, ideally he's still not that good of a pass rusher. Right. Occasionally it's a nice rush, but it's not good enough.
Right.
And you mentioned Sweaty. Sweaty, you just didn't see him much today.
Mm-hmm.
Eagles don't have an A or even close to an A-level pass rusher other than Carter from the interior, who's just an incredible football player.
Mm-hmm.
But the outside pass rush, the edges are just not getting there. That's without BG. I mean, I'm going to mention it again. It's a problem. And you mentioned they had a blitz, and we don't know what the percentage was. And they're more of a timely blitz team. The Eagles will never be blitz happy. That'll never happen with Fangio. He doesn't believe in that. Never has, never will. It's about timely blitzes, and they've done a good job of timing it. Today, they missed it. And also, the other thing is, I do wonder if they got out of the rush lanes. We'll see what the tape looked like and see if they did that with Bryce Young.
Yeah, but I think that goes to your point that they probably, having faced him now for the first time, didn't have a real. I mean, you can watch it on tape, and I don't know that there's not a ton of tape on him, right? Because he was benched for quite a while there. So I think that they were getting their feel for how he was playing in the moment.
Maybe so, but the bottom line is this is a game that you just feel, if you're an Eagles fan, and everyone watching pretty much is. I doubt we have any Panther fans watching. I just have a small bet on that one. But you got to feel good if you're an Eagles fan. At least they won. I am concerned. Now, the letdown, hey, you could call whatever you want. You can't quantify a letdown. But then you look at by the way, we need to mention the first quarter is atrocious again. Oh, God, so bad.
Well, that's why I said we learned nothing new about this team.
True.
This was the same team for the last 7 or 8 weeks. It just
the offense, passing offense looked like it was a mirror image of everything else. But it's they won the game. Bottom line is they won the game, and that's what matters most. This should be a great game at 4:25 next week against the Steelers coming into to the Linc. Good teams find ways to win. So let me throw this back to you. Concern going forward. What are you concerned about right now that we had this game to learn about the Eagles? What are you concerned about?
I guess I'd be
rank them
that if I'm sort of just concerned about how this NFC playoff picture is going to shape up, and if the Eagles lose again, they're probably not going to get the number one. I mean, they may not get it anyway, but if you get the 2 seed and the Packers become like the 7 seed or the Vikings become the 7 seed, because both of those teams have some pretty difficult schedule, they might lose again. That's a tough draw. I mean, I think the Eagles are going to get in trouble someday against a quarterback who can put up 28 points on them. Like a guy who can get away from some pass rush like Jordan Love, or a guy who has an elite receiver like Darnold has with Justin Jefferson. And plus they have a very good defense. And that folds into my other point is teams that have a really good defense who can already slow down what's not a great Eagles pass game. It's just really a matchup worry, because I just don't think there are that many teams that are good enough to beat the Eagles, other than maybe 3 or 4 in the NFC and maybe a couple in the AFC. And I'm not going to let one close game against the Panthers, who took Kansas City to a close game, who took Tampa to make me think any differently of the team. So it's basically the same concern I have. But I will say, after today, I have a heightened concern about the kicking. I really do. I thought Jake Elliott would get it together by now. And like you did, the fact that you even mentioned, do they work out a kicker, should be a scary thought for Eagles fans, because Jake has been money, and they don't win Super Bowls and playoff games without Jake. So if he's not being able to make 50-yarders, then it's going to be even more hard for them to win.
Even just to be reliable. Again, it was an offside by Carolina on the extra point. That wasn't even close.
Yeah.
What is going? I don't know. He's pushing it. He's pushing it at what? He pushed that field goal right. It moved and it pushed right. So he's got something mechanically wrong. Because what we were told at the time when this new staff came in 21, they look at the operation. There was something off on the operation. It was causing Jake to hesitate, and they cleaned that up. Boy, did they clean that up. Jake was money Jake, as you said, for several years. And then for the first time in I don't know how long, he's in a funk right now. I mean, it's
yeah.
So I would sum up the issues with Jake Elliott. Mm-hmm. That punt late was phenomenal. That was perfectly placed after a career game last week with 5 inside the 20. A couple in the first half were not good, but he had the big one late, so we're not worried about him. By the way, Cooper DeJean was the punt returner. Isaiah Rodgers and Shipley were the kickoff returner. Shipley's was down, but Rodgers had 1 for 27. So I would say Jake Elliott's a problem. I think we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the pass rush is concerning. This is the first game without BG of the two, of course. That is a concern. So we have to make a note of that. It's our job to make a note of what you see and what's good and what's not so good going forward. Still, the run game was phenomenal, which we thought, but I'm not worried about the running game. Then Hurts has just got to be better, and also the offensive coordinators just got to continue to help him. They just got to figure it out. What do they need to do to get it out of his hands faster? It's got to get out of his hands faster. Nobody takes longer to throw the football from snap to release than Hurts, and it's largely because he's not decisive, particularly early in the game. So that's got to change. That actually, you could debate what's more important right now, because the field goal, the kicker making field goals and extra points, I think that's pretty damn important.
Yeah.
But Jalen just being consistent early, if he's just average, they're the best team in the NFC. I think they'd be better in Detroit, but of course it's subjective, it's debatable, but it's got to get the passing game going.
So, quick thing, shout out to Sean McNally here in the comments, because he says, I am a Panthers fan. He writes, Panthers fan here. They played a great game, just couldn't get it done, which is, I think if you're a Panthers side of it, yes, you're looking at that. Great game, just couldn't get it done. Unfortunately, that has been the story for the Panthers 3 straight. It's like the opposite of the Eagles, right? The Eagles always get it done, even if they don't play a great game. The Panthers have played above expectations for them for 3 straight weeks, but they have not been able to pull out the win. So thank you, Sean, for watching. I appreciate that.
Yeah, cool, man. I'm wrong.
And I got to say, Big Will, who says, geez, from one week to another, Philly is winning, yet you guys act like they lost. Are you kidding me? Did you not just hear us say that everything we talked about is the same thing we've talked about for week after week after week, and yet we only think there's like 3 or 4 teams that can beat the Eagles? We're not sounding an alarm here. This is basically the same conversation we've been having. So
our job is to tell you what we see and what we know. We're not fans, folks.
Yeah.
Our job is to tell you straight, as people know football, this is what's in front of them, good and not so good.
Right.
If you want to be a better fan and smart, you got to say, okay, this is the problem with my football team. This shit needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
The good stuff, we know the run game's phenomenal. Okay. Right. Offensive line's phenomenal. They had a couple leakages, but coaching is generally pretty good. There's a lot to feel good about, but the stuff that's not good is not, you don't excuse it.
Of course. And the coaches will go
to
the Novacare complex and say, this is the stuff we have to clean up. I mean, it's football. Like you said, it's our jobs, but we have tens and tens of thousands of viewers of this podcast and listeners. And I would say 99.9% of them understand the message we're communicating here, but sometimes people just can't take it when you're even a little bit objective. But nonetheless,
be smarter, man. We're
just laying it. Nobody said that the Eagles were going to lose their next 5 or 6 games, or they're in trouble. In
they're
fact,
very talented.
We made a point to say this is not last year's Eagles team. We're confident in that they'll be fine.
I think today was a little bit
as of right now. Right? What my point is, we're not over panicking to a close win or anything. Like, I don't feel like it's a house of cards they're sitting on. They're really good.
Yeah, it wasn't like, okay, the defense collapsed last season. This is an inconsistent game. I think you said it earlier. This is just an uneven game defensively.
Yeah.
Offensively, the run game was great as we expected, but the passing game's a problem. The passing game's been a problem all season. It's just, can Hurts take it? Can Kellen Moore get it out of his hands faster? They've got to do that.
Right.
That's even more critical.
Yeah, and by the way, Big Will might have been reacting to other people's comments. I didn't keep that in mind. It may not be something.
Okay. I'm just saying we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Right, just doing what we're supposed to be doing. All right. So we've got the Eagles have the Steelers next Sunday. That is not going to be a night game. It's going to be it's still a 4:20. It's a 4:25 game, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Right, and then so this is an interesting part of their schedule now, because pretty soon Washington is also going to be coming up on the schedule as well.
2 weeks.
It's the week after. And I know people are going to slam me for this, right? I was not speaking tongue in cheek, but I said, watch out, because I think the Cowboys have won 2 in a row. We'll see what happens against the Bengals tonight, but I think the Bengals are really hurting.
Tomorrow.
I'm sorry, tomorrow. Yeah. But either way, they have another easy game after that. The Cowboys. I said it's possible they bring a little 4 to 5 game winning streak into Philly at the end of the year and make this thing a little bit interesting. But we'll
lose 44-6. You set yourself up for that one, brother. Because
that was great.
I remember where I was in that press box. Was it 08 or 09, folks?
It was 08. Definitely 08.
Yeah. And we all was it a 4 o'clock game?
It was a 4:00 game because 3 things had to happen in the 1:00. Yeah, have like the Raiders had to beat somebody. The Bears of all team
Raiders had to beat the Bucks, right?
Yeah. Yep. Raiders had to beat the Bucks, and the Bears, I think, also had to win.
Who was the player? Okay, you remember this because we've gone over. Who was the player for the Raiders who made the play? Did he play for the Eagles?
Rashad Baker, who I believe is a South Jersey native, who would wind up going to camp with the Eagles the following year, intercepted whoever was playing quarterback for the Bucks at that point. Josh Freeman. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but exactly. We got there to give folks an idea. The media, a lot of us got there early because we wanted to see, because in the press box you could see they put the games on. We're like, well, all of a sudden there's no way this is going to happen, right? There's no way the dominoes, as you talked about, would happen, and they all fell. One of the most amazing things that I could remember in Eagles play for making the playoffs of what had to happen. And now the Eagles Dallas history is pretty interesting, nevertheless. But look, they won the game. Bottom line is they won the game, but they got a lot to clean up. And Hurts and Sirianni have won a lot of games together, man. And all they do is win. That's the bottom line. Is that all they do is win? But
yeah,
they got to solve this pass the game problem because it's not pretty right now.
True indeed. Cue the DJ Khaled. All they do is win, win, win. So that is the storyline for the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles. All right, we've talked about the offense. We talked about the defense. The only thing we usually like to wrap it up with injuries, and there was a concern there when CJ went to the medical tent to get checked out, but he did come back into the game. I think he made a pretty big hit too on somebody in the fourth quarter who maybe was.
We got Leggett early, but he also got hurt again in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, but didn't he come back? I thought he came back each time.
Yeah, I think he did. Right, McCullough and Maddox was the third safety. It looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a safety. They got a depth problem at safety. It wasn't a problem to start the season, so that's something we'll have to monitor throughout the week.
Yep.
See about Blankenship's concussion.
Yep.
It's big, as you mentioned earlier. What Greg told us is he had heard from the building that they think the coaches think he's a tone setter. They didn't have that today, and I thought overall that's a problem. But again, they won it. The winning streak is it not? It's 9 games, right?
Yes, it is 9 games.
That's impressive. I mean, look. The other thing is, to wrap this up, you're never going to play a perfect game. You're not going to play great every week,
right?
Through playing inconsistent football and consider inferior team, they still won. They got a lot to clean up it's not a short week, but in a week that they against a very good football team. And by the way, the Steelers are playing lights out right now.
Yeah.
They had one blip on a short week on a Thursday in the snow at Cleveland, but they're really good. So, and they win anywhere, home or away. So that'll going to be a slobber knocker next Sunday. It's going to be a fun one.
All right. Well, I can't wait. We're going to have a great week of coverage here on the Inside the Birds platform. Of course, we'll have Q&A coming out on Tuesday, and we'll have more Inside the Birds, and we'll have Andrew DeCecco doing his rookie diary with Charlotte native Will Shipley, who I'm sure was excited to be able to play in this game against his hometown team, the Panthers, and then come out with a win. We'll have Gun on One, and we'll have Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell and the pregame show. So make sure you keep it all here, and make sure you go to InsideTheBirds.com to get all of Andrew DeCecco's game coverage from today's game and going forward. So that's going to do it for Inside the Birds post-game live. For Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Catch you on the next one.